Welcome to our presentation. It's a University of Faisalabad in Pakistan presentation that's co-presented and actually presented by Mark Russell at Purdue University. I've been fortunate to be related to this institute of, as you can see, extension education, rural development since my sabbatical days in 1996. And I'm honored to be on this committee and to present this for Mohammed Saleem and his team at the University of Faisalabad. This is an opportunity for us to think and learn about Pakistan and how this is related to much of what you already know. But Pakistan is quite a ways east of where many of you are sitting in Greece right now. We've circled it in yellow. It's between Afghanistan and India. It's the fifth most populous country in the world, which really surprised me before I started working there and collaborating. They have a very strong livestock sector, and of the 80 million people, the 60% of the GDP is related to agriculture overall. Livelihoods and food security are very important, obviously, to the large income of rural communities. And you can see this is just a description of the size of the livestock industry. And we were interested, not only am I an animal scientist by nature, but we were interested in how this entirely works together to be able to look at their economic stability in the country. Within this country of Pakistan, the most populous and most engaged part of the university, the government culture is in Punjab. And this is where most of the cattle, the buffalo, the activity as far as livestock production and meat production are located. Tremendous amount of rural people relying on food through animals and red meat, as you can see in this slide, depicts a lot of the statistics from the dissertation and the research results. 80% of all livestock are raised by an estimated small scale farmers. So really this is an extension presentation on how does the government extension program reach smallholders in rural Punjab district. So overall, this was an attempt by a university that has this Institute of Agricultural Extension and Education to evaluate or analyze the livestock extension services that are provided by the public government or their Director General, which is their extension service, separately from the university. The overall dissertation did all of those things, but we've highlighted in green what we're going to touch on at this particular seminar at our International Ag and Extension Education Conference. I really wish we would both have been able to be there, but it didn't become possible under the circumstances. So first, this study wants to look and identify the sources of livestock-related information that are used by the farmers in Punjab district, province, and then also to give recommendations or suggestions of improvement to the public extension program and educational program of the government. So just a little bit about the research design. Faisalabad district is a larger area within Punjab that they selected and decided because it was the largest number of registered farmers under the system that the government uses to keep track and license of all the districts in Punjab. So it was specific to that district. The study used a cross-sectional research design and determined how many people it was going to sample by getting enough to have a 5% confidence interval and confidence level at 95%. That determined that 383 farmers were in the sample size in a tinsel. A tinsel is basically a township in many of our ways of thinking, so they were equally distributed across the district in each of the counties or community areas. After ensuring the reliability and validity of the interview, the data was collected by SPSS. This interview schedule was tested for face validity and content validity with 30 respondents from the areas that were not in the survey interview schedule itself. So Mohammed interviewed them, and then working with his committee and others, we determined how to improve the reliability and finalize the data collection interview schedule. All the data were entered, as we said, in SPSS. It was calculated that the Cronbach alpha score was 0.72. All the data were collected by Mohammed face to face during the fall of 2019. A lot of results, but from those, we decided to put in this abstract just a little bit of the facts and the data. The overwhelming majority of the 383 respondents, they were categorized in different ways by land owning and renting and all of that, but the overwhelming majority of the farmers needed help with animal health is what their primary and largest need was. Similarly, they said 60% and then 58% of the farmers also needed information about animal feed and animal breeding. And any of you in the livestock industry, this is pretty common. Animal health, nutrition, and breeding are the kind of the essence of livestock production. However, only 36% of the farmers desired information related to housing. So they kind of felt they knew what they were doing related to housing and didn't need that assistance. Only 11% of the farmers got their animal breeding information from the public field staff, meaning the government extension, livestock and dairy development organization, while 48% and 17% of the farmers consulted private veterinary field staff and other farmers for this information rather than the government, which is interesting, and it's probably consistent with what we would do. Breeding is usually a private enterprise, even in our own country in the United States, but here it really is evident that the government was not viewed as a primary place for animal breeding. This is consistent with data that was reported others that unfortunately said farmers did not have much knowledge about animal breeding and tended to genetically select within the historical selection, quality selection, and heritability genetics of their traditions. 24% of the farmers acquired health information, animal health information from the public staff. 55% of that information from public staff was felt from private consultants, and farmers consulted with each other for 18% of the information. 99% of the time, and this is, I don't think, surprising, farmers rely on their own personal experience as well in order to make health decisions. Diseases, as you can read in the slide, are not surprising and not different, whether it be fever or milk fever. And in this case, they don't mean milk fever. They're talking about fever, ticks, foot and mouth disease, mastitis. At those percentages were the problems that they had with their livestock. Different diseases of animals were reported in Pakistan before that, and we've seen all kinds of diseases listed here reported as not uncommon to that district. So there is a lot of animal health issues that are not being addressed on a regular basis. And now we turn to the recommendations of what did the data say, and then how would this, in this case, as we've said before, is the Extension and Education Institute making recommendations to the government. There's a need to monitor the visits of veterinary officers and veterinary assistants to ensure regular visits, and this addresses the animal health aspects of it. The livestock and dairy development officials should provide cost-free services to all the livestock farmers, and that's a government agency, which would make sense from a public extension point of view. Field staff should be strictly prohibited to receive payment, this is taken straight from the dissertation, from the farmers. The veterinary staff, and they should be flexible while dealing with the farmers so that farmers feel free to contact the veterinary staff to access services. And this is a reference to feedback from farmers that felt that there was sometimes the government was also having individuals that expected to be paid for those services. Properly operate and maintain the helpline. There's been a helpline for decades. It was originally phones and now it's cell phones, but it's still an active service of the government. Better monitor the vaccination activities of the Livestock and Dairy Development Organization to file recommendation schedules, ensuring availability and affordability of subsidized or purebred inseminating material. And remember, this was a desire to learn more about the genetics and alternate ways to raise or make needed funds to provide for these services, and regular field days or extension days, educational activities for farmers. There was also a caveat that Mohammed included in his results that farmers believe that the extension information delivery is relatively biased to larger and more influential farmers. And I think that in most cultures, the larger the farmer, the larger the equity, the land holding, the more likelihood they can access resources and information. And I don't find that as surprising data as I look at the results of that. So the concluding recommendations of this part of the dissertation is recommended that by farmers and this researcher, Mohammed Saleem and his committee, that every farmer become more aware of the new programs and incentives that can be initiated and are being initiated by the government farmers. There's certainly a need to develop a comprehensive livestock policy while keeping in view the target populations and their resources. And the indication here is that as the government continues, since it was a British colony till now, the resources have been developed in ways to benefit the government and not necessarily all of the small holders as well. And then lastly, the government should strengthen the public sector extension by drafting livestock extension policies that specifically address the needs of smallholders. The challenge and the real purpose of presenting this paper at the conference is that Pakistan and many countries of the world are quite different than the way we are structured in our extension system. So Mohammed's final conclusions of this part of the dissertation are that the challenge is greater to be able to integrate the research and the needs and demands of the public from what is really needed to direct the extension program if the University Extension Research Unit is not structured to be directly integrated with the government, in this case, Livestock and Dairy Development program or department. So the reality as we think about, and there's in the abstract as well as here are the publications in some of the reference from this part of the discussion.